Devaya.
Om Namah
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
That's right. I'll say the prayers. Everybody can mute. It's okay.
Not
Om
this one.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yes, call and response just doesn't work on Zoom, unfortunately. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayat nasta prayeshvabhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. Reading this morning from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 14, verse 10. Pashyotpatam naravyagra Divyan Bauman Sadaikan Darunam Sangshato Durad Bhayam no Buddhi Mohanam. One more time. Pashyotpatan Naravyagra Divyan Bauman Sadaikan Darunam Shamsato Durad Bhayam no Buddhi Mohanam. Who else would like to chant now?
Pashyotpatan naravyagra divyan bhauman sadaihikan darunan sangshato durad bhayang no buddhi mohanam.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Pashyotpatan naravyagra divyan bhauman sadaihikan dharunan samsato dhurad bhayyam no buddhi mohanam.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Paschotpatan narabhyagra divyan bhauman sadhihikan duranan samsato dhurad bhayam no buddhi mohanam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Now the synonyms, please. Pasya, just see. Utpatan, disturbances. Naravyagra, man of tiger-like strength. Divyan, happenings in the sky or by planetary influence. Bauman, happenings on the earth. Sudaihikan, happenings of the body and mind. Darunam, awfully dangerous. Samshataha, indicating adurat, in the near future. Bhayam, danger. Na, are. Buddhi, intelligence. Mohanam, deluding. And translation. Can we move the row of the devotees' faces, please? You can put that up at the top so we can read everything. Oh, can you do that? Oh, can I do? Okay.
What do you wanted?
I can't read the translation because the devotees are blocking. Can we move the devotee column to the top of the page?
Yeah, I think it'll be from your side. I'll come there. Yeah.
I have to do it? Okay. No, okay. All right. Anyway, there we go. Okay, all set. Just see, O man with tiger's strength, how many miseries due to celestial influences, earthly reactions, and bodily pains, all very dangerous in themselves, are foreboding danger in the near future by diluting our intelligence. Purport. Material advancement of civilization means advancement of the reactions of the threefold miseries due to celestial influence, earthly reactions, and bodily or mental pains. By the celestial influence of the stars, there are many calamities like excessive heat, cold, rains, or no rains, and the after effects are famine, disease, and epidemic. The aggregate result is agony of the body and the mind. Man-made material science cannot do anything to counteract these threefold miseries. They are all punishments from the superior energy of Maya under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, our constant touch with the Lord by devotional service can give us relief without our being disturbed in the discharge of our human duties. The Asuras, however, who do not believe in the existence of God, make their own plans to counteract all these threefold miseries, and so they meet with failures every time. The Bhagavad Gita clearly states that the reaction of material energy is never to be conquered because of the binding effects of these three modes. They can simply be overcome by one who surrenders fully in devotion under the lotus feet of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. These threefold miseries are the tips of the trident of the goddess Durga. Adhyatmika, Adhibhautika, and Adhidaivika. Adhyatmika means miseries self-imposed or self-created through the body, mind. Adhibhautika means miseries inflicted by others over whom we have no control. And then Adhidaivika means miseries that are inflicted on us by higher powers. Really, we have no control over any of these. And yet we have total control over all of them in one respect. In the 11th canto, the Avanti Brahmin, the story of the Avanti Brahmin is told. He was a prominent man in his town. He was known for his very ruthless business dealings, his exploitation of people, and his accumulation of much wealth. So by circumstances, he lost his wealth. And when he lost his wealth, his family left him. And he was left to be a beggar in the same town where he had exploited so many people. So when the people saw him begging, they felt a great opportunity to get revenge on all his previous misdoings. He had, so when he would beg, they would not only refuse to give him any food or any money, but they would spit on him. They would steal his begging bowl. They would urinate on him, and they disgraced him in so many ways. They were happy to see this formerly proud and cruel person in a humbled and humiliated position. But in that condition, amazingly, this Avanti Brahmin had the deep realization that all of the miseries he was undergoing were really not the result of the influence of the stars or that of other people or karma or any other factor. Does anyone know what was the only factor that was causing his suffering from his circumstances? Anyone remember?
He thought of his karma or something?
No. He said, it's not my karma, it's not the demigods, it's not the stars. Anyone know?
His mind.
His mind, yes. He said, it is only my interpretation of these events that is causing my suffering, nothing else. So in that respect, we have control over how we don't have the means to stop them, but the way we respond to them is our choice. So in this section of Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, Maharaj Yudhisthira is sharing at this stage his forebodings about the inauspicious signs surrounding him and his brothers. And indeed, as the chapter unfolds, the worst comes true. But before we get to that, we get all of these omens that he'll be describing in these subsequent verses. Beautiful descriptions. So after he receives the news of what has happened, and which has actually brought about all these inauspicious omens, he immediately knows what to do. He makes some final arrangements to turn over his kingdom, and he moves on. He knows how to renounce. He is prepared for this moment, and he undertakes it fearlessly. So this also is within our power to do. We cannot stop the miseries, but we can be prepared for them. We had a very graphic example of this recently. I've been traveling in the last couple of weeks and was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. There's a wonderful community of devotees there in Farmington Hills, all west of Detroit. And in that community was a very beloved lady who was a pujari, mother, a wife, a very devoted servant of the deities and the devotees, very beloved in the community, 39 years old. And she had some kind of mysterious lung ailment, which was causing her a great threat to her life. So she had a lung transplant, but that also unfortunately did not take. So she was on her living on the respirator, just being kept alive by the artificial breathing and out of pain by the opioids. And this was how, when the doctors finally said there's nothing more we can do for her. So she'd given instructions, and at that point, her husband removed the medication, so she became conscious, and they removed the breathing tube. She had 2 hours left to live before she would be unable to sustain herself with any oxygen. So during those 2 hours, a large gathering of devotees came into the intensive care room. They said almost 100 devotees packed in there. And there were many other intensive care rooms in the ward by Krishna's arrangement. She had the biggest one. All the other ones had single people just alone, unconscious. But there was a wonderful gathering of devotees and kirtan, and her Guru Maharaj, Radhanath Swami, called in and chanted and spoke. And this was the way in which she was leaving her body. It had all been planned and prepared. So the devotees who were there remarked how she was totally detached, even though she had 2 children, 9 and 11. She had prepared them, she had prepared herself, she had prepared her husband. She was completely at peace, even though if she could have, she would have stayed, but she had understood that Krishna was taking her away. And so as she faded, she sat up a little bit, offered her respects to all the devotees, tears coming from her eyes, and said Hare Krishna, and then left her body. It was a very powerful experience for everyone who saw it. It was even filmed, and I believe it's available on YouTube. So the point is that we do not have control over the threefold miseries, but we have control over how we respond to them. If we think that by our actions we're going to mitigate the miseries, then we're on a fool's errand, because they are beyond our circle of control. There's a famous book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the author describes one of these habits as working within your circle of influence. It says all of us have a little circle of influence, and then we have a bigger circle of concern. So our circle of influence are those things that we can actually control in our lives. Circle of concern will be many things we want to influence, but we can't. So the threefold miseries are within our circle of concern, generally speaking. Now, the strategy the author propounds is that if you focus in your circle of influence, it will expand to accommodate more and more of the items in your circle of concern. So rather than wondering about trying to do this, trying to do that, a devotee focuses on those things that the devotee can control. What are those things? Obviously, our sadhana, our hearing and chanting, our association, our practices of bhakti, offering prasad, deity worship, all those things are totally in our control. Even as we lose our physical faculties and mental faculties with age, we can still maintain those simple practices almost to the very end of our lives. So therefore, we can respond to miseries and to unwanted things in our life in a way which gives us peace. Bhoktaram yagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam yatvamam shantim richati. Lord Krishna says that one who knows that he's the controller and he's the beneficiary, he owns everything, he controls everything, and everything is meant for his pleasure, and he's our friend. He's not a vindictive deity. He is our friend, and he is doing everything for our benefit, even though it may not feel like it at times. So the forebodings that we see and we're hearing about in this canto, in this chapter, are ascribed initially by Yudhisthira Maharaj to celestial influences. So this is contrary to what the Avanti Brahman was saying, isn't it? He's not giving that layer of interpretation. He's saying, no, these celestial influences are showing all these inauspicious signs. The thought of Krishna leaving is almost too difficult for him to bear. So he's grasping at straws at other possible explanations. So this is so pertinent to our times because there are many inauspicious omens on the horizon for this earth. I'm not an astrologer. I have an astrologer friend who said it's pretty common knowledge amongst them that this period that we're in right now is characterized by unbridled conflict, starting sometime around 2020 and going to 2029. There is a great deal of evidence of a nuclear war coming in this period. And of course, Srila Prabhupada made these predictions decades ago. He saw that the foundation of our civilization, which is the motor car and oil, was artificial and unsustainable. You know, there are nearly as many cars in the world as human beings, and all of these cars warm the atmosphere. We're all aware of this. People have denied it, but it's a known fact. We're already seeing the impacts of more extreme and unpredictable weather, an inauspicious omen. Politically, there's turmoil, enormous turmoil, that is, again, quite evident. I don't have to elaborate. But in my life, in my 68 years, I've never seen America more polarized and people more antagonistic towards others simply because of political beliefs. I have never seen people more extreme in their positions on putting issues above relationships, differences before similarities. The polarization is intense. In addition, the greater international theater is fraught with a more intense conflict in Ukraine that has surfaced in the last many years, more intense and more sustained. And with the threat being brought up of nuclear weapons, plus rogue states such as North Korea are getting nuclear weapons. And all of these developments are quite inauspicious, especially considering these astrological influences. So who knows if there's going to be a nuclear war or not? Nobody can say. Who knows what the economy is going to do? Who knows if we'll be able to even continue buying food or if we'll be able to continue growing food? You know, it's beyond our control. So these miseries are meant to give us an incentive to develop our Krishna consciousness. These miseries are all there for that purpose. They're not vindictive punishments given by the Supreme. I know in our Judeo-Christian upbringing, most of us had this notion of God as the punisher, and you'd better behave or else. And the last words of the Old Testament are, lest I smite the earth with a curse, a threat. So this presentation of God as the supreme disciplinarian has been useful to get people to behave in certain ways. But as my friend Rabindra Sarup Prabhu was pointing out the other day, the regulative principles that we follow are not moral principles, they are spiritual principles. That we cannot advance in spiritual life without following these four regulative principles. It's not that then we just become pious and good people because we're following the regulative principles. No, we can transcend the repetition of birth and death through these regulative principles of freedom, right? So Krishna is not looking at our sins, he's looking at our service. He's not looking at our shortcomings, he's looking at our seva, at our positive contributions and our positive actions in his service. That is within our control. And every time we do something for Krishna, we just offer patram pushpam palam toyam, just any little devotion that we may express, even in the midst of many other disqualifications. Krishna is just seeing that good, and he takes that into account. And so knowing this, the more we contribute to this spiritual bank account, to this relationship with Krishna, it's totally in our control, and it takes us above the anxieties associated with these threefold miseries. None of us want to see the earth warm, but it's warming. None of us want to see war in Ukraine, but it's running. And none of us want to see nuclear war, because it would devastate so much of the human society and ruin the earth for years to come. But we can't stop it. What can we do? Even within our ISKCON Sangha, there's more division than I have ever seen in my 50 years. This intense pressure from conservative side that everything has to be done in this conservative way, and liberal side, you could say, saying, well, we can't do our service under those circumstances. It's very intense, very intense. It makes me feel like these astrologers are onto something. But again, what can we really control? We really have no control over much other than our own service. If Krishna wants to empower us to do something, then he'll empower us, but that's his doing, not ours. Just as Srila Prabhupada said when he was on the Jaladuta at the shores of the United States, I don't know why you've brought me to this terrible place. And I know that my words, I don't have the power to convince these people, but by your influence and by your desire, my words can be effective. By your desire, I can do something for my spiritual master. So now I place myself as a puppet, and it's your control, and you can make me dance as you like. Such a beautiful meditation. This is the position that is within our control, and with which we can address these calamitous happenings today, just as Maharaj Yudhisthira ultimately did at his time. So those are my initial thoughts on this verse. Anyone like to ask any questions and raise any related topics for discussion?
You can share 15 more minutes if you like, then we can go for question answer.
Okay, well, I'm bringing it up now in case anyone would like to direct the discussion in any direction.
I can ask you something.
Okay.
First, you mentioned that you gave example of the Brahman, Avanti Brahman, how he realized that, oh, okay, everything in this material world is problems, but he nailed it down. Mind is the problem. Okay, then how come Yudhishthira Maharaj is not considering on that level?
Well, because of his intense bhakti, he cannot tolerate even the thought of being separated from Krishna. And so he is, as I said, grasping at straws, anything else, something must be wrong.
And my question was on the omens.
On the omens, I understand, but I'm saying this is just the beginning of the pastime. He's seeing the omens, and when the omens are fulfilled with this most inauspicious thing, the departure of the Lord, he knows immediately what to do. So like Yudhisthira, we need to be prepared for anything. We may resist, we may object, we may grasp at straws and look for other things to give us hope, and that's fine and that's good, that's natural. And even our duty, as Prabhupada said, I am not one to be easily discouraged. But the point is that he was prepared, and just preparing ourselves like that wonderful devotee in Grand Rapids or like Yudhisthira Maharaj, that is how we go beyond the mental interpretations of our miseries. Really, it comes down to, Prabhu, like, what do we expect? Krishna hasn't forced us to come to this world. It was our choice. And in this world, there is no permanent position of happiness. So what do we expect? The more we lower our expectations in this world, the more prepared we are. Expectations for happiness. The more we lower them, the more happy we actually become. The more opportunity for happiness we have. because now we're no longer under the threat of these threefold miseries. We'll feel the pains, but we know in the long run we are addressing the solution. So Yudhisthira Maharaj is doing that, but it's sort of in slow motion here because we're just reading the beginning of the pastime. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Vishnu Gada Prabhu, Hare Krishna. My
Hare
dear
Krishna,
friend.
Prabhu. So we heard, we hear it sometimes about not endeavoring to mitigate the material miseries. And of course, that doesn't mean we can't mitigate them. If it's too hot, we can't. Yeah. So could you give a little bit of a guideline about how we know when we're over endeavoring to, and where we should just accept it from Krishna?
That's a very good question. That's the question of our lives, really, isn't it? How much should we endeavor to correct things in this world? Of course, there's the famous serenity prayer. God, please give me the strength to change those things I can, and the patience to tolerate the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? This is the essential question of every spiritualist. I'm just going to have to answer practically. I mean, I know you have many realizations on this subject as well. I have found that when I'm in a distressed situation, I just have to raise my hands like Draupadi and say, okay, Krishna, this is beyond me. And I'm prepared to do whatever you want. And I will pledge myself to your service. And that's really all I can do. So if Krishna then gives me opportunities to do things, I'll do them. But if I'm doing them thinking that's Krishna's desire, but it's just not working and not working, especially if I see that devotees are offended or that somebody else is being hurt, then I can understand it's not Krishna's desire, it's my mind. It's my own mental construct. And Krishna is helping me by showing me this is not the path he wants us to take. There's this saying that good judgment is born of experience, and experience is born of bad judgment. So one of the beauties of getting old in Krishna consciousness is that we have made so many mistakes that we can learn from. So we should not be timid or afraid to try things, but if we try them and they're definitely not working, then we should understand Krishna is gently pushing us in another direction. If we are trying so hard to do something that is affecting our chanting and it's affecting our heart and our enthusiasm, then we can understand that's a atyahara, is that it? Prayasha, atyahara, over endeavoring for something mundane, which is very difficult to achieve. Then that's a cause of falling down. So the first guideline to answer your question, protect our devotional creeper. Nothing is worth sacrificing that. And within those parameters, if we can do something, if Krishna empowers us, that's his desire. I always feel this is how Prabhupada could 100% sincerely say that all his success was Krishna's mercy. Because he had come to a point, and think of it, years and years and years of endeavor to start a Krishna consciousness movement with no result. One casual disciple in 20 plus years of full-time endeavor. And he was never discouraged because he always knew Krishna was the doer. And when the opportunity presented itself and his efforts began to bear fruit, he still understood Krishna is the doer. So just one more thing, and forgive me if I'm going too long here, but there's a story about an executive at IBM who made a $10 million mistake. It cost the company $10 million. And of course, he was devastated. And he wrote up his letter of resignation and brought it into his boss. And his boss looked at the letter and looked at him and said, "You can't quit. We just spent $10 million educating you." So in that way, in our devotional service, we will make mistakes. And if we learn from those mistakes and we adjust, then we can do more and make better decisions and do things that can influence the world so far as Krishna empowers us without being attached to the results. So Vishnu Gada Prabhu, I know you understand these things better than I. What are your thoughts on that very astute question?
I don't understand them better than you, but anyway, I appreciated your viewpoint that, whatever your endeavors, realizing and accepting that that's whatever happens, it's Krishna's arrangement. Krishna's that's the center part, and that the devotional service, we shouldn't minimize the devotional service to do, whatever arrangements or mitigation we try. So that was you answered that very nicely. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a nice question. Thank you. Dronacharya Prabhu, your thoughts?
Hare Krishna Kalakantha Prabhu. Such a nice presentation, very clear and concise. I wanted to focus on when you mentioned that Krishna is our well-wishing friend. How important that is to see as part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
That if everything happens, but it's happening because, and knowing that Krishna is our well-wishing friend, can we understand that Krishna has a plan in it for us, so that, this is happening, but there has to be a reason for this has to be a reason for this, and it's only for my benefit that it's happening, because Krishna wouldn't do anything that is adverse to me. Now I just have to, then it's up to us to understand what that opportunity is in the circumstance.
Yes.
So how,
Okay.
it's okay. I'll stop there.
Well, you're going to ask, how do you ascertain? How do you roll with the punches?
To be able to see life in that way, that this has happened, but Krishna is my friend, so therefore there must be something I am to learn from this.
Yeah, it's mostly in my life, at least, I have learned that by getting beaten down repeatedly by the merciful Lord. And each time I get beaten down, I feel like, okay, I've learned a little something. This is a real issue for people who have a hard time believing in God. That why bad things happen to good people. A devotee knows that there are no bad things and there are no good people either. Daivihesha gunamayi mamamaya duratyaya. Everybody is under the control of the modes, and thus we wouldn't be here in the material world if we were as pure and sinless as we thought, as we may think we are. So it's good to think in terms of, I'm getting a minimized reaction, that these are just minimal reactions of things that I deserve. I'm thinking, Prabhu, just if I may share with you one, I went through a very difficult period about 40 years ago. Toughest period of my life, really, as a devotee. And I was talking with a friend and said, well, I guess it's Krishna's mercy. And he said, you don't believe that, do you? And I said, no. I didn't have the realization. And the experience I've had is that it takes years sometimes to reconcile what is a very difficult, painful experience with Krishna's loving hand. And that is the beauty of growing old in Krishna consciousness, that we, instead of looking back on our life with remorse, we look back on our life with enlightenment, with appreciation. That by that very challenging test, Krishna steered me in this direction, which has proven to be so beneficial for me. And if our purpose is pleasing Krishna, that will happen over and over and over again, which just expands our circle of influence to be able to serve in more meaningful and impactful ways. If that's our intention, to serve Krishna, he'll guide us this way and that way, and then the influence that we have increases. So it is Krishna's kindness, really, when we encounter difficulties. It just is difficult to see it at the time. So that's where the patience recommended by Rupa Goswami kicks in, that it's okay to feel like I can't, with all, sincerity, say, okay, Krishna, that's your mercy. It's okay to live like that for a while. And in time, that will change. So our test is to be patient enough to allow that change of heart to gradually fill our hearts. All right. Do you have any thoughts, Prabhu, on your own scintillating question?
Nothing that nothing to share at this time. But I really thank you for that. That's really very helpful.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you.
Yeah.
Acharya Prabhu, Haribol.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you. Thank you for the nice class. And also, as a side note, I'm going to be in Florida in a few weeks, and I'm hoping to see you and visit Krishna House while I'm there.
Can you just tell me quickly the dates?
Basically the second, third week of December, from the 8th to the 14th. Will you be there then?
I'm just going to be gone personally that time, but Krishna House in Gainesville will be running. I hope you'll drop by.
I'll still visit.
Okay, it'll be finished by the 11th, so go early if you can.
Okay. So here's my question or my situation. This idea, all suffering is just caused by your mind. It's all Krishna's kindness on you, is a super excellent philosophy and super excellent attitude to have for me, for an individual. But I've seen too many instances where that idea is turned around and used as almost as a weapon to delegitimize another person's suffering, to silence people who are abused or reformers, and to protect abusers. So if that's something of misuse of that idea, if that's something you'd like to discuss, I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, it's a beautiful point. As devotees, as we progress in Krishna consciousness, one of the tasks that seems to come to us often is counseling others. So in counseling, we learn that, first of all, to communicate well, we need to avoid taking a side in the other person's problem. We can express empathy, but if we just say, oh, that's terrible, and what a shame, and I feel so bad for you, what we're actually doing is giving our interpretation of their situation, as opposed to what we're really supposed to do, which is allow them to express themselves and help them to do so. So this is a classic example of an interpretation of another person's suffering. And it's a very foolish one, as you correctly point out. Oh, that's your karma, Prabhu. First of all, it's abysmal counseling. And secondly, it is not our position to decide what is or what is not someone's karma. To actually, if our purpose is to help the person who's going through a difficulty, what we really want to do is extract their feelings and help them give voice to their feelings, every angle we can think of. And we do that not by making assertions, but by asking questions. How do you feel about that? What are your options to do about that? It is not our responsibility to take the problem upon ourselves. Yes, we are enjoined to be para dukkha dukhi, to try to alleviate the miseries of others, but we don't do that by giving our answer or interpreting it for them, unless we're specifically asked to do so, like with somebody who takes us as a spiritual authority. That's a different thing. But in general, if people aren't asking us for advice, then we want to help them reflect on and understand and experience their problem and resolve it themselves. A counselor should never own the problem of the counselee. A counselor rather helps them take responsibility and empowers them to think of solutions and address them and pursue them on their own. You remember in the 70s when devotees were getting kidnapped and deprogrammed, it was amazing that they actually had professional psychologists who were supporting that practice. So they would kidnap somebody and take them to an isolated place and tell them, look, Your decision to be a devotee was not your fault. You've been manipulated. So this is exactly the antithesis of mental health counseling, isn't it? Where we want to help people be responsible for their decisions and not try to tell them that they're not responsible for their decisions, you see? So I totally agree with you. It's practically violent to say this is your karma. Rather, we have to ask, what do you think is causing this? What are the underlying reasons? How do you interpret it? You see, getting the person to do their own reflections. If they come to a point through our questioning where they say, well, you know, I've done a lot of things wrong. Maybe this is Krishna's way of responding, you know, then we're getting somewhere. If they feel that way, it's one thing, but they're not going to feel it because we tell them. It's foolish. Is that all right?
Yes, thank you very much, Prabhu.
All right, good question. Okay, we are 8:34. Is this time to call it a class? Any other thoughts, reflections before we wrap up?
We have some more time, actually, if others can ask any question. But here's what we have self-realized people, self-realized personalities who are aloof from the pains and pleasures of this material world, and they're completely perfectly situated. The root cause of the problem in this world is not only the self, and everyone in this world is going through, the mind is the root cause. That's one thing. On the other hand, when we are living in this material world, the realities, day to day, what are the expectations? Should we, how will we balance that?
Right. We have to do our duty with the understanding that Krishna is in control. Mama nusmara yudhyacha. The realities of this world should not make us depressed and want to quit, but they should make us circumspect about how much we're going to accomplish and enjoy in this world. In other words, as we become more realized in Krishna consciousness, we have our bags packed to go back to Godhead. We are not invested whatsoever in any expectations in this world. And yet, as long as we're in this world, we'll do our duty. So we do our duty with full-hearted enthusiasm because this is what Krishna wants us to do now. And the moment Krishna wants us to transfer and do something else, we are ready to go. We have no reason to stay. There is a story of Alexander the Great, who asked for his funeral. He had conquered this huge empire, and then he contracted syphilis, historians believe, at a young age, 39 or something. And despite his doctor's best efforts, he was dying. So he called his ministers to his bedside and said, when I die, I want you to put my body on a palanquin with the palms facing the sky. And I want this palanquin to be carried by my physicians. And behind the procession, I want that gold coins be thrown in the street. So the minister said, Your Majesty, whatever you say we'll do, but can you tell us why? So he said, I want people to see that even though I conquered the biggest kingdom in the history of the world, I'm leaving this world with empty palms, with nothing. And even though I was attended by the best physicians, they could not save me. And even though I amassed so much wealth, that wealth ended up being enjoyed by others. So in this way, in a very enlightened way, he expressed this point I'm trying to make. We do our duty. That is what is in front of us. And we do it with full-hearted enthusiasm as an offering to Krishna. And all the time we know that this is not our home in this world. We are ready to leave whenever Krishna desires. And in that frame of mind, we can fight the battle with detachment. This was Srila Prabhupada's desire. He was asked, when we're old, Srila Prabhupada, can we retire to Mayapur and just chant and read? And he said, you may do that. I am not advanced enough. And he said, I want to die on the, give me this benediction that I want to die on the battlefield like Arjuna. So we saw in the last stages of life, Srila Prabhupada was trying to go to Gita Nagari to show his disciples how to live off the land. Abhiram Prabhu, who was Prabhupada's nurse at that time, told me that his intention was very clear. He had been encouraging the young men in the Radha Damodar party and others to be brahmacharis, to be full-time preachers, to move to sannyas, and then most of them could not do it. So he was concerned about his disciples, that they would stay in Krishna consciousness, even though they had failed at what everybody had thought was going to be their destination. So he wanted to show them how to stay in Krishna consciousness as grihastas. That was his purpose in that trip to Gita Nagari. So as he said, 50% of my mission is book distribution. Now the other 50% I want to establish. And as you and I have been discussing, Krishna Kirtan Prabhu, it's very difficult for us city boys to live off the land. In Alachua, they live off the land pretty well because a lot of people have mobile homes. You know, they're about 3 feet above the grade. So they live off the land in that, at least to that extent. But as far as farming and raising your own food and being able to live a sustainable life, sustainable agrarian life, very difficult. So we don't have that option, but the alternative, living in the city, earning money, shopping at the grocery store, that's all okay if we do it in the consciousness that this is still not my home. And there's nothing I can do, like Alexander the Great, there's nothing I can do to make a lasting position in this world. Whatever I accumulate will be enjoyed by others. Whatever physicians I can try to save me, I will not be salvageable unless Krishna desires. Sita Devi, Haribo, how are you?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances.
To you, Prabhu. Haribo.
So, thank you for having such a wonderful discussion. Most of the class, I am doing my chores in the morning and I'm just listening.
Mm-hmm.
But the enlivening discussion today definitely got me thinking more. You kind of answered this question earlier when Vishnu Prabhu asked. I wanted further clarification if possible. You know, as a grihastha, you have kids, right? And when do you know is the right time to let go, right? They still rely on you, they still have certain questions, and they still feel, you know, they need you, and, you know, and there are certain things in my mind that I want to do, but I am, you know, I'm always thinking, putting them first, right? Their requirements, their needs. This has to be done first before I can do this, and you know, and obviously whatever I'm thinking to do is devotional, is not mundane. But again, I'm kind of like, no, first we have, you know, so I'm kind of like stopping myself stopping me from doing a lot of other things that I would like to do. What is that point? Because, you know, my son is going to go to college next year, right? But I'm realizing, in my mind, I was like, okay, you know, after the kids go to college, you know, after my daughter also goes to college, there are certain, you know, moves that I can make in my life for devotional service. And but then I'm realizing my son is not ready to, you know, just be on his own just because he's going to college. And that'll be the case with my daughter too. And, you know, she's not going to college in 3 years from now. So I'm like, gosh, when is the time, you know? Yeah, that's my question.
Well, for a mother, there's never a time. When it really feels that when you really feel that they're not your babies. Srila Prabhupada said that the mother's love for the child is the closest thing to the jiva's love for Krishna in this world. It's the most selfless of any love in this world. But Chanakya Pandit advises the age of 16. Right, from 0 to 5, you give them everything. From 5 to 16, you're like a tiger, disciplinarian, and then 16 on, you're their friend. So we parents often feel like, well, maybe I should have disciplined them more when they're antagonistic. It's in their teens. We have to discipline them up to the point of their being able to fend for themselves. In Chanakya's time, that was 16, probably 18 is a little more realistic in our society. When they can vote, when they can drive, when they can legally make choices. So discipline needs to be there until 18. But after that, and this is the hard part, then you have to become their friend and treat them like a peer. That means not asking them to explain themselves, that they'll make decisions that we know are wrong or we think are wrong, and all we can do is ask them questions about those decisions, try to help them see the implications of those decisions and at least bring them up. But if we try to then control them at that stage, it will be counterproductive. So to be specific, I would say 18 under our circumstances. At 18, you got to become their friend. You got to cut them loose. You got to start treating them as adults. And being a friend doesn't mean you're pushing them away. It just means that, again, like I was saying about counseling, now it's your problem. It's your problem, and I'm here to help you. But I'm not going to take your problem on my shoulders as I have up to this point in your life. And that requires some discipline of thought in our side. It requires some, it's hard to change gears, to change rasas from, Vatsalya to Sakya, because Vatsalya, parental ras, is a higher position. But that's how the children can grow. And they will make mistakes. I find that as in taking disciples, it's the same thing, that you have to watch them make mistakes sometimes and just allow them to learn the hard way. You can give advice and they don't take it, and then they learn the hard way. It's like Mark Twain wrote that, when I left home at 16, my father was the dumbest cuss in the whole county. And when I came home 4 years later, I was amazed how much the old man had learned. So children needing to get out of the nest will mistreat their parents often. And that creates a lot of anxiety. The best way to deal with it, in my opinion, my understanding from Chanakya and other sources, is to be very tolerant and respectful. You can always ask questions, but you can't give orders anymore. They'll come to a point, though, if they're not becoming independent and self-reliant, they're still living in the basement, you may need to exercise discipline and say, look, you can't live here and smoke marijuana, or you can't live here and do this or that. I'm not gonna tolerate it. You have to get out. That's tough love, and it's tough to give. But it sounds like you haven't come to that point, but that's the result of too much indulgence,
Right.
So,
I believe, Chanakya Pandit's advice, 16 is right, actually, because I'm experiencing it, and and I know I have told myself, okay, to my son who's 17 now, that I just have to just kind of be his friend, and I can't be telling him all the time what to do. So that part I have experienced and learned the hard way, as you may say. It's me taking further steps into more, in spiritual endeavors, and realizing when the time is right for me
Mhm.
to, you know, to do the needful is my thing. But I
I
believe,
see.
yes. So
Yeah, and I understand your question a little more clearly, I believe. Yeah, so in that regard, the children will become very bitter if they feel they've been abandoned for Krishna consciousness. So
right.
it's very important as a parent to make sure that they know they're number one. Srila Prabhupada wrote to Lakshmi Moni that she was saying, I want to do deity worship, but I have these kids and I'm always contaminated. And Prabhupada said, your children are your deities. He was very clear about that. Make your first priority your children's care, because you only get one chance, one shot at raising your kids. So yeah, you don't want to push it between you and your children. If they are favorable, great, you're very fortunate. If they're not, they still have to be number one. And the psychology shows that children will eventually, in most cases, adopt the values of their parents. But if the parents are pushing the children, then the children will have a harder time doing that. So your own spiritual life, you enjoy that. You make them feel they're number one, but they see you enjoying your Krishna consciousness. That will have an impact on them, as long as they don't feel that they're being supplanted. Does that make sense?
Right. It does. Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. What a pleasure to see you all. Hope to see you in person this weekend. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu. An unbelievable class. The range was, from psychology to philosophy to life. I'll just leave you with this one thing. I am 57 and my mother has not let go of me yet. So everybody here knows that. So thank you
Mother
very,
is
very
here
much.
too, Prabhu.
And she's
Hare
here
Krishna,
too.
Prabhu. Your class was wonderful. I was
Thank
also learning some points from your class.
Thank
As
you.
a mother for 57.
Thank you very, very much, Prabhu. We could go on for
Yeah.
another 2 hours, but
I'm
I
not-
we have to let you go.
I'm not sure if I want to get between this in this discussion.
Yeah,
That's
you will be in trouble.
Thank you.
Right. There you
Quick,
go.
quick announcement before we go. Just upcoming this weekend. We have Kalakantha Prabhu who's coming to Philadelphia today. So he'll be there on Sunday to give the Sunday feast class. So please make sure you make it. I know a lot of you come already, but make sure that this is a priority on your schedule if you can. Tomorrow also, we have our community cleanup day, Save a Day at the temple. I'm starting at 10 a.m. and then I'll go until lunch if you come. We'll get a couple hours of service in. It's a wonderful way to meet devotees and connect closer with Krishna in the temple. And then lunch will be served afterwards. Also a wonderful way to, maybe we can get some of Kalakantha Prabhu's association then as well. We also have with him Brihat Mridanga Prabhu. And he's a brahmachari. He's traveling with Kalakantha Prabhu and he'll be staying in Philadelphia with us for some time. He'll be going to India and then he'll be returning in January. So you'll get a chance to meet him as well. Everybody have a wonderful Krishna conscious day.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.